So I am going to pull in for running backs, doing this a little differently this week, only because it just continues to be the same names week in and week out. So I don't think we need to continue to belabor the same names, the same people. What I'll do is mention the running back stashes, the handcuff rankings. I adjust them every week for who is rising, who is falling, and especially if anybody gets over 50% owned, they get cut off the list. And I'll note any interesting usage trends on there. I still believe Tyler Algier behind Bijan Robinson is the number one running back stash handcuff that you could ask for. We always harken back to that rookie season when he rushed for over 1,000 yards, despite only starting 2 to 3 games to close out the year, was a top 5 running back when he became the starter over that final stretch run of his rookie season. One of the best pass protectors in the entire NFL, has a true 3-down skill set, can absolutely absorb a feature workload, and this offense is humming, especially through the backfield right now. So clearly my number one guy, Braelon Allen, continues to rise, and that's where the biggest usage nuggets, the biggest trends are of the week. Whereas Braelon Allen had disappeared for back-to-back weeks, was still a great handcuff because of Breece Hall. If something happens to him, solid spot for Braelon Allen to walk in, a very exciting, massive rookie that could shoulder the full load. But he had become just a handcuff despite starting the year as a very consistent rotation piece, had been seeing 33% of the carries leading into these past 2 weeks since the offensive coordinator changes. And then Braelon Allen became a background figure until, again, week 8, 42% rush share, his highest of the season. And it comes under Todd Downing, who had been riding Breece Hall before this. We saw Braelon Allen also pound in a touchdown here. So now we do return to that kind of handcuffs with benefits territory for Braelon Allen, which moves him up to the number 2 pickup for me at the running back position. But Ray Davis, only 26% rostered. That one makes no sense to me. We've already seen what Ray Davis will do if something happens to James Cook. That Monday Night Football game, over 80% of the running back carries went to Ray Davis. He was nearly an every down player there for the Bills, put up 23 total touches compared to just 3 for Tyler Johnson in that game. So Ray Davis, if something does happen to James Cook, we know the ceiling, we know the upside, and yet he's still only rostered in 26% of leagues. Makes no sense to me. He should be well above the 50% threshold. I did bump up Blake Corum this week, and not for any particular reason other than now he's got 19, 15, and 19% rush share behind Kyren Williams. No, you're not adding him for any standalone benefits. This is not a Braelon Allen situation where you might be able to toss in Blake Corum in a desperation situation. It is the Kyren Williams show. But we saw Kyren miss some significant time last year, and again, consistently churning out 90% snap shares. That could eventually catch up to a smaller back like Kyren Williams. And so if he misses any time, I really do think Blake Corum, they even said when they drafted him, reminds us so much of Kyren Williams. That's why we need to add some insurance. We want to add a Kyren Williams clone. Not the exact words of Sean McVay, but along those lines were his post-draft comments. They love Blake Corum. And so I'm not enough to get him on the field. I understand that. But if something does happen to Kyren Williams, I do think Blake Corum would see a near 80% role. See that role that's making Kyren Williams such a fantasy stud in back-to-back seasons. What a punt returner this man is. Behind him, the next few names, Jalen Warren, Kamani Vidal, who I do love against an injury-prone J.K. Dobbins there. Justice Hill rising just because so involved in the passing game. He has a little more benefits alongside his handcuff appeal. Tajay Spears and Jalen Wright. I did want to note that I did add Dameon Pierce to this week's top 10. You just see Joe Mixon, an aging veteran who's getting massive workloads. The dude's phenomenal. Averaging 27 fantasy points per game across the games he has made it through. Cannot discredit anything Joe Mixon is doing, but it is on the back of massive volume. And at his age, there's a real chance he could break down, making Dameon Pierce one of the – I don't hear anybody talking about him. I've never heard anybody mention Dameon Pierce anywhere, but they've traded away Cam Akers. Dameon Pierce does have a 50-yard touchdown on the season so far. I think he is one of the best handcuffs you can stash. He's out there in pretty much every single league. I know he hasn't been the perfect fit for Bobby Slowick's offense. But just a couple years ago as a rookie, though, Dameon Pierce was a top 15 running back in fantasy. So something should happen to Mixon. There's really no one else that's going to steal any volume from him. Maybe Dario Gabawale might steal a little bit of passing game work. But I never really hear Dameon Pierce talked about, so I just wanted to shout him out, as well as Jalen Wright, very explosive rookie over there. We talked about him at length. We're not going to go all the way in depth on him yet again, but we do know McDaniels loves speed, maximizes speed. And if this team continues to fall out of contention, that's yet another path that Jalen Wright might enter this conversation beyond just injury to either Achane or Mostert. The team might just want to see what they have in their young rookie, Jalen Wright, who they traded up for in this past draft, should they get eliminated from that playoff contention. And then I did want to toss out, too, I think the banner might be covering up his name here, but a little bonus stash. Keaton Mitchell just got activated off the IR, at least to practice. He has not yet joined the game day roster, but only Devon Achane was more efficient on a per-touch basis. In fact, Keaton Mitchell might have threatened him had he not ultimately suffered his own injury. But every time he touched that rock last year, Keaton Mitchell, it was an electric factory. This guy has true game-breaking speed and ability. And I imagine, Justice Hill, as good as he's looked, the team does love him. They gave him a nice contract mid-season for Justice Hill. But I do think Keaton Mitchell could take that role over should he be back to his explosive self. Got to maybe get ahead on in deep leagues over here. But that wraps up my running backs Wolfpack. I just kind of wanted to rip through again. Unless there's an injury, it's really going to constantly be the same thing. Here's your stashes. Here's your handcuffs. Here's any difference with them. So I wanted to throw out those names. Again, a few changes to Braelon Allen's workload. Dameon Pierce now joining the top 10. And keep those eyes out for Keaton Mitchell. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments. Check out some more videos and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.